dark side.
2, 1, 0.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Play Expo Blackpool 2018. Everyone's hyped up now. Now, I just want to see by show of hands, any fans of the Spectrum here? We wanted to see. Now, we've got a really special panel for you. As you know, the Spectrum has had a new lease of life with a new product, the ZX Spectrum Next, and we have some very familiar faces on our panel here. What I think we'll do is we'll start from the end there. Mike, you start. Introduce yourselves and tell us what we might know you for.
I'm Mike Dailly.
You'll need your microphones as well.
I'll need my microphone. Hello, I'm Mike Dailly. I was one of the folk that invented Lemmings and Grand Theft Auto that you might have heard of.
Not the Spectrum.
We did do Lemmings on the Spectrum. We did. We did. We wrote it in-house. Not personally, but one of the guys in the office did.
Cool. Oh, sorry. I'm Philip Oliver. This is Andrew Oliver. We're known as the Oliver Twins. We wrote a lot of Spectrum games a long time ago.
Yeah, lots of Dizzy games, for example. And we've got a book out if anyone is interested. Plug the book, plug the book. The money goes to
Nice guys, as we're recording this. That's okay.
Okay, that was it. That's all I had to say. Hi, I'm Clive Townsend. I've not done any specky stuff since the mid-80s. So if you remember Saboteur 1 and 2. And hopefully the remakes will be on the next. So fingers crossed if I get some decent programmers behind it.
Hello. Yeah, if anyone doesn't know me, can you get doors there? I'm Jim Bagley. I've written loads against the Specky. I've done a lot of talks here at Blackpool. And I'm part of the team for the Spectrum Next.
Well, one question we always like to ask is, what was your first experience? So we want to talk about the Spectrum, so what was your first Spectrum experience? And we'll start with Mike and go down.
There was actually a friend of mine that had a Spectrum. I just bought his ZX81 and gave him money for his Specky, so he then went out and just got copies of games on tapes. I suspect it was Mark Minor actually, was the first one we actually sat down and played. That's stuck with me ever since, I have to say.
I got my own, sorry. I was going to say Manic Miner, actually, I think it was going around a friend's house and actually seeing Manic Miner was sort of the first game I saw on the Spectrum. But our actual first Spectrum which we received was actually a gift from David Darling because he asked us to write our own conversion of Ghost Hunters from the Amstrad to the Spectrum. Because another guy was writing Robin Hood, converting across to the Spectrum, and we made some comment that it was taking too long, so we got a gift of a Spectrum in the post saying, well, you do it yourselves next time.
Okay, there's a funny thing that I do remember, and that is a school friend had a Spectrum, because we went down a different route. We started with the Dragon 32, then went to the BBC Micro, then on to the Amstrad, and it was actually a few years before we got to the Spectrum. But I do remember seeing a friend's Spectrum, and he was playing this game called Tetris, and we just looked at it going, it's just coloured bricks falling down the screen. Are you serious? It's like, that's not a proper game.
It did okay.
It did all right. Not necessarily on a Spectrum, though.
First Specky game I saw was Arcadia in W.H. Smith's, but I really wanted to get a Specky because a friend of mine had a ZX81 and it was amazing. So the nearest I'd seen was a 380Z that we had at school. We had one computer in the whole school, the lovely black and green monitor. So when I saw a Specky with colours, I thought, yeah, it's the way forward.
Really? Is it working?
I think so.
My first experience with a Specky was, again, like Mike's. I had a ZX81 at the time, and a friend had a Specky. Went round to his after school, and we were playing Wheelie. I don't know if you remember that one. Great game, love it, even to this day. And we also used to play Jet Set Willy.
Well, this is a question for you, Jim, because I know you've been involved with the Spectrum Next from very early on.
Yeah.
How did you first get involved with the project, and were you surprised at the interest? I know it smashed the Kickstarter, didn't it?
Yeah, the Kickstarter was brilliant. Thanks, guys. Yeah, it was last year at Blackpool, wasn't it? That I was doing a talk and Enrique was doing a talk after me, and he said, "Do you want to like come and see?" Well, did I want to go and see his talk because it might interest me? So I said, "Yeah, sure." So I went to the talk and he was introducing the Spectrum Next. And at the end of it, he said, "Is there any questions?" So he put me under, "Where can you get a dev kit?" So basically, but once he gave me the dev kit there and then, and I went away and did some things with it. And because it was titled the ZX Spectrum Next, I thought, well, because it was originally like a clone of the Spectrum with div MMC, with the SD card reader built in and everything, I thought the next iteration of the Spectrum would have been a little bit better. So I thought with the accelerator, which was the Raspberry Pi Zero, I thought I'll write hardware sprites, because when people come up to me and say, how do you do this? I want to get into programming. How do you get a sprite on the screen, or how do you get it scrolling? So I thought, because the Spectrum screen layout is really awkward, and especially for a newcomer to be able to start programming it, learning machine code, just to get a sprite up on the screen is quite awkward. So I thought, if I give them the ability to put a sprite up on the screen or scroll the screen around, it would make it a lot easier for people to get into it and stick with it, rather than like just getting the Spectrum Next and they've got it and then they play games and then they want to program and they get stuck and then they just throw it in the drawer because they got frustrated with it because they didn't have the buzz that we got back in the day when we were programming, and we were lucky enough to be able to know how to do it in machine code. So with being able to get stuff up on the screen, it gives you that buzz of an achievement, so it makes you want to continue. So I thought, to make the Spectrum Next more accessible to other programmers or other kids, like they'll probably show us the kids and stuff, and a lot of other people will. So I thought, if I make it easier for them, it should make it more interesting for the community, because there'll be a lot more people making games and be able to make games.
Well, here's a question. I mean, anyone here feel free to chip in. Why do you think there's a need for new Spectrum hardware as opposed to, say, emulation?
Well, it had some absolute classic games, and with modern TVs, you can't even plug the damn things in. Even if you go to your loft and get it out, you can't. And you can play these things on emulators, and we do, but they don't feel the same. Over the years, you've occasionally gone back to old computer games on emulators and played them, but it's just not the same. It is not the same as playing on sort of the wheel thing, or a wheel sort of keyboard. And so I think that's the novelty, is that you can go back and actually relive them the way they were supposed to be, and now do a little bit more as well.
Well, to everybody, what's your favourite Spectrum game as well?
I like ninja games.
You always expect to plug our own game in. Mine Disney before, right?
You probably know mine was Manic Miner, and in 2012 I did Manic Miner, but I wrote it for Pac-Man hardware, because back in the day I converted a load of arcade games to the Spectrum. I always wanted to make an arcade game, because that was where my first love of games came from playing them in the arcades. So when the chance came to write a game for the arcade, for Pac-Man hardware, I thought, what should I do? And it was obvious that, to me, that it was going to be Manic Miner. A, because I liked the game so much, and B, was because there wasn't that many. There was enough sprites on screen that the Pac-Man hardware could do it, and there wasn't enough. There wasn't much in the background, so it meant that the hardware could do it, because it's all in ROM, so you can't change the characters. Once you've used up the 256 characters for the backgrounds, that's it. You've got no more. So that's my favourite.
Anybody else got a favourite? What about you, Mike? What was your favourite?
Yeah, I'm a German. I mean, back at the early ones for me, there's so many of them. But Manic Miner is always the one I keep going back to. It's just such a simple thing to pick up and go, and it's just such good fun.
I have to say that
me and Andrew, when we first saw the isometric game, sort of Night Law Alienate, Head Over Heels, it's like, how the hell are they doing that? It's like, we're programming these machines, and how are they? I mean, technically, you could just about see how they were sort of moving the pixels around, like from a programmer point of view, but it's like, you shouldn't be able to store that number of levels in the memory, you shouldn't be able to get it that flicker free. That was quite staggering what they'd got out of the Spectrum.
And Batman, of course, that was isometric, wasn't it?
Which one?
Batman.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
Batman.
of course, sorry, forgot that one.
Yeah.
There was things like Tau SETI, if that's how you say it, and the hard driving and a few others, which are actually properly 3D graphics was filled in through polygons, which was like, hang on, this is actually a Spectrum, like how you're doing this stuff. The frame rate wasn't brilliant, but it was good enough, and it was still 3D. It was still impressive polygons. I mean, I think
was much better.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that
3D
was
Star Strike, the second one.
3D Star Trek. That's the one I was thinking of. That was incredible.
Our driving was just awful.
Yes, okay. Don't say that, we employed the guy. He worked for us.
The original arcade one was awful as well.
Okay, right. Anyway, what I have to say is I liked all of the variety in all the different things, and there were so many where you saw a game and you thought nobody has done anything like that ever before, and there were so many completely unique. And unfortunately, you don't see that very often now. Fast forward now, and it's like, well, it's another shooter, it's another racer.
We're getting a wee bit better now, but back then,
Everything was novel, original, and there were times where you go, how, I've never seen anything like that before in my life. And that was what I loved about the Spectrum.
My girlfriend's just spotted Paperboy outside, which we had the same conversation that back in the days people made games that were fun, not a copy of another game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. If only there's a way to get those old 3D games to run a bit faster.
Some of the 2D ones that we did with scrolling needed to go a bit quicker too.
Yeah.
Well, speaking about that then, Jim, I mean, tell us, what are the improvements over the original Spectrum? What are the specs of this new system?
You can go up to 14 megahertz, so you can go 3.5 like the original, or you go 7, or you go 14. So, like, games like 3D games, Star Strike, wasn't it? Yeah, 3D Star Strike, and a couple of others. Was it Driller? Yeah, and they work a lot better at 14 megahertz, obviously. And some, I think one of them was unplayable at 14, so it was that fast. So that's not too bad.
We've got a video of a Spectrum Next game if we want to show it, because it's.
Yeah, sure.
I want to show the video of Pogie.
So this is written by Lyndon Sharp. He's the guy that actually wrote the original Quick Snack on Spectrum, and he was talking to us last year saying he'd like to do a game on the Spectrum Next. Because he's mainly a programmer, we said, well, why don't you take some of the graphics and improve them and the gameplay of Pogie, which was a game we wrote on the NES.
We'll kick into the gameplay in a second. There we go. It's not finished, but it's looking pretty impressive.
It is very Nintendo-like though, isn't it, the quality?
They might have started life on a Nintendo.
But now on the Spectrum Next.
So obviously you couldn't do this on the original hardware.
No. As you can see, they've got sprites and scrolling, which is one of the things.
And parallax scrolling too.
And a lot more colour.
Yeah.
What display is this coming out?
Would this be HDMI then? You're looking at it on the system. You could display an HDMI?
This was actually just recorded straight off the dev kit, actually with the camera pointing at the screen. Literally, which...
Probably not the best way of doing it.
That's an old school way of doing it.
I was just going to say, it's the way of doing it, isn't it?
Well, one thing that I think it always impresses people when they see the Next is that incredible case design as well. So tell us the story behind that.
Basically, from what I've gathered, the bits that, because it was before I joined last year, Victor and Fabio were doing the Spectrum Next. Well, they were doing the TBB Blue. And they asked Enrique, because Enrique went to school with them, they're like childhood friends, and since the Becky days. And he asked Enrique if he wanted to sell the TBB Blue in UK. And then Enrique thought, yeah, sure. And he decided not to just do it as a TDB Blue. He thought, if we're going to sell it, why not make it with a case as well? Because there's other boards and stuff that come out, and they're just, you have to plug things into them just to get the keyboard, and so it was. He wanted the memory. Enrique wanted the memory of like back in the day when basically you got a box, you took it out when you got home, or at Christmas when you opened it, and once everything that you needed was in the box, and that's what Enrique wanted for the Spectrum Next. And so he thought, well, I'm going to need a case and a keyboard. So the only way to do that was to get in touch with Rick Dickinson, who designed the original, as you all know anyway. Or you should do.
That one! That one!
And
that one.
Yeah,
I think it's more iconic. More unique.
That was the proper one.
That's a proper one.
Yeah. And so basically he got in touch with Rick and he started designing it, and then it sort of grew into the Spectrum Next that we love today.
What has the reaction from the community been?
The reaction from the community has been amazing. You know, that everyone loves the case and the keyboard, and I do too. It was what drew me to it as well. The fact that, you know, it was all encased, and it was like being back in the 80s, wasn't it? So, you know, with the Kickstarter as well. When we started the Kickstarter, the 250k target that was like set initially, the fact that we cracked that in 33 hours, I think it was, that was amazing. The day that it went live, my phone was constantly vibrating. The vibrations were getting interrupted by more vibrations of the amount of messages that I was getting. I had to turn the phone off for a while because it was just constantly bouncing around the room. It was mad. And the buzz and the feedback from the whole community when it went live and everything, it was unbelievable. The whole like month of the actual Kickstarter was amazing, from the minute go to right up to the end, to even having to do the tutorials.
We'll go into tutorials in a bit, that's actually a really interesting topic, but I mean, you know, for example, you guys, the Olivers, I mean, going back to the original Spectrum, I mean, how important was that system to you guys? I mean, it opened a lot of doors.
Absolutely. So we'd obviously learned how to sort of make make games on all those other machines, the sort of the Amstrad, the Dragon 32, and the BBC. But coming across onto the Spectrum, it was so many more people had Spectrums. There were so many more sales. So when we were releasing the games on the Spectrum, they were selling 4 or 5 times the number of anything else we'd sold. And that allowed us to sort of then ended up setting up a company and starting to employ people.
It was the first proper like games machine, because actually, believe it or not, and some of you are old enough to remember, people used to say, you can't play games on computers. I mean, we're slapped at school for using sort of games on the BBC Micro. It's like, they're not for that. And Commodore...
Yes, they were. They were very good.
Commodore business machines, if you look back at the adverts, it's to do home accounts, right? Stop playing...
the games.
Yeah, whichever. Monty Mole, classic Commodore 64 game. But the Spectrum seemed to embrace it, and everyone just saw it as a games machine, and it was cool. And it did come out with all the variety of games at an affordable price for everyone, and everyone could actually afford to go out and buy them quite often. So it started the whole industry as we know it, game developers.
I guess the other thing for us personally was the financial success of our Spectrum games meant that we didn't have to go get real jobs and we didn't have to go to university.
Yeah, because actually, if you had the Apples and the Pets and stuff, games came out on those, but from people who had real jobs, who were doing it as a little bit of a hobby on the side, whereas this did allow people to actually set up as developers to sell games because they actually made some money, which is actually an important point for our industry.
I think as well as us making games, the Spectrum gave other people a chance to make games and learn to program. And when consoles came along, which you couldn't do your accounts on, you could make games. No one could make games. So
No, it's true. It's true. There was no barriers to entry. I mean, it was just down to your own sort of ingenuity and hard work and graft, and working it out yourself as to how to program. Nobody was standing in the way, getting in the way. There weren't financial barriers. I mean, when the PlayStation came out,
£10,000 for a dev kit. It was quite a barrier, but there's no hobbyist who's going to ever write on a PlayStation, that's for sure, or Nintendo. You had to be a proper developer, and the only way you got to becoming a proper developer
was to be a developer.
Was to have
Catch-22, that one.
Yeah, but you had to have some success on another platform. Spectrum was a good one, certainly for us and some of our friends on the ST and Amiga. But they had to start somewhere, and that's what sort of Kickstarter did.
I've got a question for Mike.
And actually, can I just say, Kickstarted it. I mean, the Spectrum was huge in the UK. It was a UK invention, obviously Clive Sinclair in Cambridge and stuff. But it spawned a whole generation of programmers who, to this day, a lot of them are still in the games industry, either in this country or abroad. And actually, it's sort of the UK is at the centre of sort of the origins of video games, thanks to people like Clive Sinclair. And Spectrum.
Yeah, and actually, whilst we see lots of American developers, and it's really surprising because obviously we go over and meet these, the number of British people who, like, you can go into, I don't know, Riot Studios or something in Santa Monica, and you'll find a couple of English Spectrum programmers. There will be. You just know. You go around, and it really spawns something because in America, they ended up. The Commodore 64 was not that popular there, and they ended up with the Nintendo a little bit earlier. And so kids got them because they wanted to play games, and actually that's all they could do. Whereas we got them because we wanted to play games, and after a while we got a little bit bored and wanted to sort of see if we could make our own games. And that's what these gave us the ability to do. And there's other places that just didn't have that entry.
Well, I was wondering with Mike, you have many years of experience making games, so what's drawn you to Spectrum Next, and what are you working on as well?
Well, obviously I started back in the day with all these guys, and I've always found the older style hardware is just much easier to get into. The restrictions are much more fun to program for. The bigger PCs these days, whatever you want to throw at it, they'll kind of do. It's not that entertaining. Whereas getting the most out of these more limited machines is much more fun. It's a good challenge. And so any new machine that's coming out that will have any kind of following at all to make it actually worthwhile doing something is great fun to get into. So when the Next kind of appeared, and obviously I had a Spectrum, however briefly, and it was good fun, and all my friends had them, and then this resurgence of them means that there's this huge audience out there that are looking forward to it. So it's not where you get these, Arduino kind of kits. So, you can make a games console and 5 people have them. There's going to be a good number of them out there. And even the emulators and stuff will catch up with it, so that everybody else that doesn't have the hardware will still be able to play the games. So it's an easy draw for somebody like me that just wants the tech to be able to play with, basically.
Well, we've seen some demos of 100 Lemmings on screen
Maybe.
and stuff. Any info on anything?
Again,
Did you bring a video?
No, they didn't.
Come on.
That's what they're all here for. Technically, I do not own Lemmings. I can't actually officially do it.
There is a way, though, isn't there? You can take graphics from the other, like the Windows version.
Yeah,
or something,
that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm writing a program that if you've got Windows Lemmings, we'll rip everything out of that and make it into the format for the next. So the code's all mine. That's fine. That can be released. And then the actual graphics and levels and stuff you can rip from the Windows ones and then be able to play it. So the initial technical challenge was to get the level up and see if it could actually have the number of Lemmings on it. Because the original Lemmings, we had like 20 or something. Dog slow. It was okay for what it was, but the next, just being able to do it a bit faster, the 256 colour mode, it can look as good as the Amiga one. So that's kind of the goal. We'll see if we get around to finishing it. No matter what I do, all the source will go out publicly afterwards anyway, because it's not going to be a commercial thing, it's just doing it for fun.
Sounds great.
Well, Clive, let's talk a bit about Saboteur. That must have really changed your life when you were a teenager and opened a lot of doors.
Definitely, yes. Don't know where to start. Yes, I started making some games, partly because a friend of mine had a ZX81, and I was dying to get one. Then found out the ZX82 was coming out, so I got myself a Spectrum, and made some crappy games, took them to a local shop, and the guy there said, we'll sell those, but there's a company in Taunton, in Somerset,
go and see them. So after spending 6 months loitering around, just learning machine code and exciting things like that, I started making Saboteur. I wasn't actually making Saboteur for the company. I was making a game called Chicken, which was like a Game & Watch flip screen, horrible game. And in my spare time I was doing Saboteur. And then the boss saw that and said, oh, we should sell that. So yeah, made Saboteur, made Saboteur 2, made the Reaper, which hopefully no one knows about. Yeah. And then moved on to sort of Game Boy, Game Gear, Master System, all sorts.
I mean, did you know just how popular that game was when you were a teenager and that game was like selling everywhere?
I didn't really. We didn't have the internet, so there was no feedback other than people in magazines saying, like your game. Yeah. Whereas nowadays, if you do something good, people know. If you do something crap, people know. It's like living in a tiny village. If you do something, it encourages you to be a nice person. You have to do something decent.
Well, you recently brought it to iOS and Android and mobile platforms. There must have been a bit of a challenge involved in translating those controls to a touchscreen, was it?
Definitely. It's a keyboard game. It's not really a phone game. It works, but it's better with a controller. So.
Well, any plans to bring it to the next then?
Yeah. Well, as that would have it, the remakes, I had a Speccy version and a Commodore version and lots of others. So the main graphics and main menus were not Speccy or not Commodore 64. They're a bit of a halfway mishmash of old school and modern. So with the next, you can have a Speccy screen and then have a nice 246 colour overlay to do the panel. So it's testing for it. So my plan is to do a Saboteur 1 and 2, and then not a Saboteur 3 yet. I've been planning a Saboteur 3 for 30 years. So I haven't quite done it. But it's set on an island with lots of trees and it's very green. And I've also got some plans for a prequel, which is called Saboteur 0, which is very black. It was originally called Ninja Darkness, which was my original name for Saboteur. So I thought, if that's going to be Saboteur 0, and that's darkness and black, and Saboteur 1 is quite blue, Saboteur 2 is quite red. Hold on, I've got 0 black, 1 blue, 2. Saboteur 3 can't be green, because that's going to be a 4, really. So I need a 3. So my plan is to do a spin-off, which is all about the colour purple.
That very underused colour.
Indeed, no one likes purple.
Magenta, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Magenta.
Yeah.
Well, Dizzy recently celebrated his 30th birthday.
Yeah.
Must have been
Shows
pretty
how old we are.
wonderful to see he's so kind of fondly held in people's memory.
Now that's the first one. What was that about Easter 8?
Sorry, that was the first one. Dizzy, the Ultimate Cartoon Adventure, in about 87 that we wrote. So yes, last year was the 30th anniversary. But I mean, Spectrum Next. Everybody's always asking us, write another Dizzy game, and over the years there's been a few interesting kind of slight starters and then stops. And we know Henrik, so Andrew was just talking to him saying, oh, I like your next campaign, it's going amazing, oh wow, if it does really well, maybe we do a Dizzy game for it, because we can kind of get our heads around what a Dizzy game would look like on a Spectrum. For some reason, it seems fairly easy to imagine that one, but we could kind of do a new one on it, and we're like, and then, so Henry were like, oh yeah, that'd be really cool. We're like, oh God, what have we just let ourselves in for?
Yeah.
But it's like 30th anniversary, and we thought, you know what, if we're ever going to do it, now does seem the time to do it. So we talked to Codemasters, and we said, as long as we're not actually selling it for money, and any money that's ever attracted, first of all, we'll probably give it away for free, and in fact, probably we will be giving it away for free, but if there's accidentally any money, that'll go to charity. So everybody's cool with that. And we've got a bunch of people who have actually offered to help us. We've got Dimitri and Eugenie, and we've got Gerard at the back. Put your hand out, mate. He's doing a load of the graphics for it. Cheers, thank you.
We do have a video, actually. Do you want to put a video on while we're talking?
Yeah, so, I mean, we can give loads more details of it tomorrow. We're going to talk tomorrow about Wonderful Dizzy. But yeah, it's making progress.
Now this runs on the original Spectrum hardware as well.
As well as the next, and there will be some enhancements for the Spectrum next as well. This wonderful Dizzy, based on the wonderful Wizard of Oz. So you have Emerald City down the bottom right. Classic pick up and drop objects. Actually, I'll tell you what, the story of the wonderful Wizard of Oz, it really fits Dizzy remarkably well. These characters who all kind of get recast in this kind of new adventure land. And each one of them has a problem that needs to be solved with some items. It's kind of almost written for Dizzy.
I know you probably get asked this all the time at the moment. When are fans going to be able to play the game then?
Well, because everybody's doing this out of the goodness of their hearts, and no money's changing hands.
Everyone's got real jobs.
We have to kind of ask favours of people. So people like Gerard and stuff, he's got a real job, and this is a hobby on the side, as it is with all the others. So we don't like to pressure people too much. The sooner the better. The design's about 90% done, as he can verify, because he would have seen it. It's got a few scripts left. Me and Andrew will probably spend tonight sort of into the early hours debugging the scripts, because that's what we said we must do at some point, because we've got day jobs too. So I think I'd estimate 3 or 4 months probably to being finished, but it's down to people's kind of generosity of their time.
At the moment we've got a lot of stuff happening in the Spectrum world. Obviously the Next, the Vega, the recreated Bluetooth keyboard that's been on sale, and like gaming, walk into a high street shop and pick up like what looks like a Spectrum now. Why do you think there's been this, anyone can answer this question, this kind of reinvigoration of interest in the Spectrum recently?
It's cool.
Retro is
it's always been there.
Yeah, retro is cool, and we're all of a certain age. I'm looking around the room and thinking, and you kind of remember that this had a very big impact on your childhood, and you want to sort of recreate a little bit of that.
It's a nostalgic value.
It has a lot of nostalgic value, but there is a certain simplicity as well. We were saying now that you buy a PlayStation game and it's £40–50. It has unbelievable production values, but underneath we had something fairly simple, fairly basic, which was fairly addictive, and I don't know, you could see the essence of what it was that was a challenge.
There was an art form of what the programmers and developers and artists were able to get out of such a rudimentary machine, but that art form created an enormous amount of entertainment. And that's what people remember, and it was the birth of an industry, a very successful industry. And actually, very successful industry. My teachers always used to sort of say, "Well, you stop playing with computer games and having this mad habit of playing with computer games. Get a proper job, etc., etc." But it was really funny. I was in a government meeting in Whitehall recently when we were all sitting round, and I was representing Tiger, sort of the association for the games sort of developers in the country, and we had somebody from the book association, somebody from theatre, and we were all discussing about what the government could do to help the industry. And at one point, because they kept saying games were so important to the British economy, at one point somebody put their hands up and said, "I'm from the book industry, can we just remember that the books are cultural too, and they're quite important for the industry?" So I was thinking, if my teachers could have said that, that would be awesome.
Yeah, stop. You must remember books still exist.
So yeah, I mean, games. This was the birth of the game. Yeah, but all money goes charity.
Right. Just say as well, like Jim says, I think the retro part of the Spectrum has been there for decades now. I think what's changed is that the hardware to make these yourself has become a lot more accessible. You know, things like the Raspberry Pi and stuff, that all this kind of hardware that you normally go into the big consoles and stuff that cost millions to make your own machine. Now it's much cheaper to kind of churn these things out. The FPGA stuff that the Next has is actually quite cheap. So if somebody wants to make a new machine, it's a lot easier now than it was 10–15 years ago to do. So a lot of these things are just coming out of the general interest that they've had for decades because it's now accessible.
Well, I've got a question for Jim, which is how much input did the community have in kind of features or?
It's had quite a big input on the features. Like there's there's been a few that have been added to the sort of the background team of where we're going with like programming and stuff, and the community helped with the basically the community did the manual, which was great for us because we've got other things to do. We've got so much stuff to do, and the fact that everybody came together like an amazing team. It was like it was meant to be. It came together that well, and it's just the way the people have got involved in it to bring it all together.